Hi everyone, Paul Atreides here with Rhyme Signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of committing galactic genocide before your descendants start to resemble a cross between Moonface from the Faraway Tree and last year's record from HMLTD. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new Dune album, VOIDKIND. The problem with genius, with hitting the apex of your career, especially when you hit it so early on, is that you've then got the tiny problem of what comes next. Edinburgh-based Dune may very well have encountered this tiny issue. 2021's Etemen Ænka was and still is one of the finest progressive post-metal albums that has frankly ever been released. Its combination of addictive and catchy riffing, brutal vocals, incredible soundscapes, and overall impeccable songwriting put it into that rare category of album that I consider to be a future masterpiece. The sort of album that we'll be talking about in reverent tones 30 years from now. So I posit again, what on earth do you do in the wake of such success? The way I see it, the band had a few options. Accept that they likely can't replicate this success, but push out something broadly similar and, okay, sirrah, pivot aggressively and release a country and western infused polka album. Or recognise what made Etemen Ænka so good, work on the bits that didn't stick, and craft something denser, deeper, less accessible, but ultimately more rewarding in the long term. Now, I'm quite relieved that the band stuck for option 3, as VOIDKIND is a towering, intimidating, at times frustratingly inaccessible masterpiece that rewards patience, diligence, and understanding with one of the most affecting and brilliant albums to have been released in the progressive post-metal world since Cult of Luna's A Dawn to Fear. Formed in Edinburgh in 2013 by French national Victor Vicart and Scotsman Dudley Tate, the band put out their first studio album of Asheran in 2017, following on from two reasonably well-received EPs in 2013 and 2014. As their name might suggest, as well as their website address of songsofArrakis.com, the band owes a lot of their lyrical themes to Frank Herbert's seminal sci-fi works of the same name. I found it kind of interesting that in 2021 we had Denis Villeneuve's interpretation on the big screen of this timeless story, and had Etemen Ænka in the same year. And now in 2024, we have part 2 of the Dune saga in cinemas, as well as the release of VOIDKIND. Be honest with me guys, have you got a little cheeky deal going on with Hollywood where you're lining up your releases? Probably not. However you spin it though, the Fremen fandom has been feasting on these respective years. The sounds contained within this release, and Dune's sound in general, subscribe to that of the more post-metal, sludgy side of the progressive metal spectrum. Now, while there's a lot of complex patterns, interesting musical segues and dips and dives as you'd expect from Prog, the band heavily embraces the kind of big soundscapes, wall of sound and intensity you'd expect from bands like Cult of Luna, Panopticon, ISIS, etc, etc. Now, I think Dune stands apart from these bands insofar as that their lyrical content is far more important to the musicality, rather than feeling like, I don't know, just a textural or atmospheric addition, as is so often the case with this kind of stylistic expression. So I want to start off here by briefly talking about what I think this album does better than its predecessor, and that's about pacing and time management. Etemen Ænka is a very, very long album, pushing into the 70-minute range, and I always felt that this was a little bit on the girthy side as far as album weights go. The quality was and is outstanding, sure, but it made the album a little overbearing to listen to at times. VOIDKIND has sidestepped the issue nicely, coming in at a reduced running time of around 58 minutes, and with a greater emphasis of getting to the point. It's only moments into opening track of Summa Blasphemia that we're blown backwards by the intensity of the recordings as the guitars, drums and vocals all work together to create an absolutely massive sound that feels familiar to what came before it, but also sings in a subtly different enough tone to make the veteran listener realise that the slightly different approach to the album is going for. It becomes apparent over the course of the first 3 or so tracks that the band is embracing that post-metal sound even more on this release. While Etemen felt more akin to releases from the likes of Mastodon, with a heavy emphasis on groove and riffs, Voidkind has the sumptuous atmospheric angle that brings it more in line with genre Titan's Cult of Luna. The atmosphere and appreciation of the bigger picture is what defines this release. It's what makes it so compelling and interesting to listen to. On the surface, it's noisy, chaotic, and violent, but the more time spent with this album, it helps you to appreciate the little moments of clarity and restraint that allow the bigger elements to stand up even taller. Take the section about midway through second track of Eleonora, where the extremities of the music and vocals fade back to allow a driving bass groove accented by sharp but gentle percussive elements to play over the top of it, while ethereal synthy elements nip at the heels of the pushing flow of the song. It's an incredible moment and really serves as this great way of allowing the listener a chance to catch their breath without losing focus to the rest of the music. And that's what I really like about Voidkind. It's this ability to take the idea of the impenetrable fortitude of the sounds within and temper them with these fleeting, gentle interstitial moments. When I saw the track listing and the track times, I was a tiny bit concerned about the two 90-second interludes of Path of Dust and Path of Ether. I don't normally much care for this kind of padding, but they're necessary palate cleansers for what comes before, and both serve as suitably well-paced introductions to the massive, violent energy of the tracks they're spotlighting after them. Dune has crafted an album that's extremely dense, but that's extremely rewarding on repeated listens, and over the course of my 8 or 9 listens or so at the time of recording this review, each successive spin has resulted in me finding something new that I missed the time prior, or something that hit me differently, resulting in a record that feels fluid in its musical dynamics and that feels as shifting and unpredictable as the sounds of Arrakis itself. So for all I love about this album, I do feel it's not without fault, and I can imagine this record will be quite divisive, which is fine. We all listen to music differently and all appreciate things differently. But for as much as Voidkind is a towering behemoth that rewards you with a delightful bounty if you put the effort in, it is a lot of effort that the album is demanding from you. In truth, on my first listen to the record, I was a little disappointed. And I think in part that's largely because I was expecting or hoping for Etemen Ænka Part 2. One of my favourite records of the 2020s was having a follow-up. Of course I wanted more of that. Etemen was built on riffs. Its foundations were in catchy, headbanging, grin-inducing licks and arrangements, and that immediacy is notably absent in Voidkind. Short of a few moments here and there, such as in Abode of the Perfect Soul or Reaching for Telos, the gargantuan riff machine that so besotted me with their previous works is mostly absent here, instead eschewed in favour of the bigger picture, the wall of sound and atmospherics instead. I think it's important that you approach this album with this knowledge. This is post-metal first and progressive metal second. The band have shifted focus to their overall approach here, and if you go into this album expecting a direct continuation of what came before it, then I imagine you'll be disappointed, just as I was on my first listen. But I hung back, I reassessed what I was listening to, asked myself what I was expecting from this release, and approached it with a different mind, a different ear. And I started to hear what the band were looking to accomplish with this release, and everything started to fit into place. I became less disappointed by the absence of the big, meaty riffs, and started to enjoy the album for what it truly is, a masterpiece of rewarding the patient listener. So, what else can I say about Dune's Voidkind? This was one of my most anticipated albums of the year. I've spent 3 years eagerly awaiting for whatever was to come next from this talented quintet, and despite some initial misgivings, I have not been disappointed. No, this album will not hit you like a truck from the first spin like their previous works have managed. It's a stoic, patient and stubborn release, only surrendering its true brilliance if you're willing to put the effort into it. It requires an open mind and for you to give every inch of your attention while listening to it. Voidkind demands an inquisitive and receptive mind to its daring and adventurous sounds if you're going to be able to fully appreciate what it's doing. Now this is a tough recommendation. I mean, you can see behind me, I've already bought a physical copy of this one. But I think for general audience purposes, I would recommend the digital copy first, as it can be overwhelmingly dense and quite inaccessible on a basic level. It's an album I would implore you to persevere with though, even if you're not sure from a first listen. Fear of the Treasures Within is the real mind killer. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, so if you loved or hated this one, please talk to me about your experiences with Voidkind in the comments down below. Please do drop me a thumbs up if you like this video, please do tell your friends about me, and please do throw me a subscription if you've been enjoying my content. But until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.